U.S. released hundreds of millions of flies into Panama. Welcome to the latest issue of Top Secret. Every week, 15 million flies are dropped over Panama from secret aircraft, creatures capable of killing livestock and threatening human lives. What's more frightening is that they are mass-produced in secret factories on American soil. But the biggest mystery is why the affected countries remain strangely silent about this unprecedented fly-dropping campaign in history. What dark truth is hidden behind this insane plan? Let Top Secret unveil this mystery right now. Fly Production Factory. This is a rather special production facility, which could be called a farm or a factory. But the common point is that this place specializes in the first factory was built in Mason, Texas, with a goal of producing up to 200 million flies per week. The flies we're talking about are California blue flies. They prefer to eat raw meat, which poses a major challenge for scientists who have to raise them on an industrial scale. Initially, researchers fed the flies a mixture of ground beef and fresh protein, but beef was quite expensive. Therefore, they sought to replace it with cheaper meats like horse, whale, pork, or beef lung. They even used the meat of nutria rodents when these animals invaded Louisiana. By 1962, the flies at the mission facility were consuming up to 98 tons of meat and 3,800 liters of protein water per week, a truly impressive number. However, raising flies is not simple, because after breeding them, they must be transported to testing sites. This was another major problem because their smell was so unpleasant that airlines refused to transport them. Factory workers had to use perfume to spray on the fly containers to reduce the odor. The mission factory closed in 1981 and moved operations to Mexico, then to Panama. Today, this fly production factory is located on an old plantation in Panama, about 32 kilometers from the capital. Unlike the initial method, fly larvae are no longer fed raw meat. But they still need a certain amount of animal protein. However, instead of using fresh meat, scientists have switched to a more economical diet, while still ensuring adequate nutrition for fly development. The current diet is a mixture of protein, eggs, and milk, then thickened with cellulose. When this mixture is poured over the larva, the food looks like sewage. But surprisingly, they eat it very well and develop normally. Currently, the factory has 115 employees working day and night to maintain continuous production. Each week they produce about 20 million flies. These flies grow up in a closed concrete space with no windows. Each room in the factory is adjusted for temperature and humidity to suit each stage of fly development. For example, to hatch larvae, they are raised in a room with a temperature of 39 degrees Celsius, simulating the temperature of an infected animal. After hatching, they are moved to cooler rooms to continue developing. To manage this process, the factory uses a specialized larval counting machine, dropping 425 grams of larvae each time into aluminum trays. Then, the larvae are arranged into small piles, each containing about 50 individuals. Every process is carried out meticulously and precisely to ensure the quality of the final product. It can be said that the work at this factory is like a real workshop, where every detail is strictly controlled to prevent errors. And the result is an effective and successful fly control program. Just 2 days after being released into the development environment, adult flies appeared. They are transferred to a cold room where they enter a hibernation state. Although they appear inactive, in reality, they are just resting in this state. Then, these flies are placed into large metal boxes, similar in size to a dryer, and loaded onto aircraft to begin their journey. When the aircraft begins flying, it's time to release the flies into the designated area. A small propeller plane, carrying 2 million flies, is one of the aircraft previously used in the military. But now, it has taken on the special task of dispersing these important insects. The aircraft is equipped with a fly distribution system, allowing them to efficiently exit the aircraft cabin. Previously, technicians had to perform this task manually by popping small boxes containing flies from the air. However, sometimes the boxes wouldn't break upon hitting the ground, preventing the flies from escaping. Everything has now been significantly improved. The aircraft flies below 450 meters, so when the flies wake up from hibernation due to the warm temperature, they only need to become alert and fly away to disperse throughout the area. After the flies have flown away, let's learn more about this species of fly. This is a fly of the Calliphoridae family, with bright red eyes and a metallic blue body. They belong to the blowfly family, a species we can easily encounter everywhere. However, the small details are what's noteworthy. After mating, female flies lay eggs in open wounds of warm-blooded animals. When the eggs hatch, the larvae feed on the flesh tissues around that wound. After feeding, they leave the wound, pupate, and develop into a new generation of flies. This fly species has long been a major concern for farmers. They can enter livestock bodies through any skin wound, such as scratches from barbed wire, tick bites, or even unprotected skin areas. After the larvae leave the host, they leave behind painful wounds on the animals. Each year, in South America alone, this fly causes millions of dollars in damage to the livestock industry. They are widely distributed from Florida to California, and can attack warm-blooded animals from large livestock to deer, squirrels, pets, and even humans. The important thing is they only need living, warm flesh to be active. For thousands of years, flies and their larvae have been present as an unavoidable part of life in America, especially in places with food and warm temperatures. There's no definitive way to eliminate them, and this makes them a nuisance to humans. However, in the 1950s, American farmers began dreaming of a world without flies. They dreamed of a future where livestock wouldn't have to suffer the pain caused by these flies. With their encouragement, the U.S. Department of Agriculture took action and things began to change. In 1951, the campaign to eliminate this dangerous fly species officially began. A team of scientists from the U.S. Department of Agriculture released sterile flies on Santo Island near the Florida coast. This was an important test because the released flies couldn't reproduce, which was the key point of the strategy. Initially nothing happened, but the scientists didn't give up. They continued testing and released another batch of sterile flies on Sanibel Island. And then a miracle happened. Within just a few months, this fly species completely disappeared from the This success launched a bold project, aiming to improve the lives of many animals and people, especially farmers. With efforts from state and federal officials, the U.S. Department of Agriculture deployed the fly elimination campaign in the area east of the Mississippi River in 1957. After 2 successful years, the campaign expanded and farmers in Texas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Arizona, and California also requested similar measures. Finally, in 1966, the U.S. officially declared victory over this flesh-eating fly. However, a major problem remained. The fly barriers along the Mexican border weren't as effective as expected. Therefore, scientists had to devise a better solution. In 1985, they decided to establish a barrier at the Isthmus of Panama, which connects 2 continents. The reason for this decision wasn't random, but because the Isthmus of Panama is an important strategic point. This fly control program currently costs about $15 million annually, but it helps the U.S. agricultural industry save approximately $796 million each year, creating an impressive success story in protecting the agricultural industry from the impact of this fly. In reality, eliminating this fly species from an area isn't too difficult. But what's truly challenging is preventing new invasions from other regions. That's why scientists have created a very sophisticated biological control system, maintained continuously through the unceasing efforts of the program team. Each week, millions of sterile flies are released in the tropical area of Panama. which is considered an important checkpoint of the program. To ensure the effectiveness of the campaign, a factory operates day and night to breed and release these flies, ensuring they cannot reproduce in the wild. However, the work doesn't stop at releasing flies. Controllers and monitoring staff must travel thousands of kilometers through mountainous forest areas, by motorbike, boat, and horse to inspect and search for fly larvae that have breached the barrier. These areas are very difficult to access and require staff to work under harsh conditions. A small mistake could destroy the entire lengthy process and cause serious losses. That's why this barrier has been maintained for over 50 years, clearly demonstrating the seriousness and determination of the program participants. Known as a very successful strategy, this barrier is not a physical structure as commonly thought. In fact, it is an effective biological control system, maintained for years thanks to the contributions of thousands of people working tirelessly to protect the environment and agriculture from the harm that the flies could cause. It is the investment and determination that have made this program successful, keeping the area safe from the re-invasion of the dangerous flies. So why did the US government choose the Isthmus of Panama instead of along the 3,200 kilometers border with Mexico? The reason is very simple: cost. Releasing sterile flies over the Isthmus of Panama is much cheaper than maintaining a 3,200 kilometers physical barrier. The Isthmus of Panama, with its strategic location, only requires a simpler but more effective control system, compared to building and maintaining a virtual barrier thousands of kilometers long. This is truly an extremely smart economic strategy, saving costs while still ensuring the area is protected from the screwworm fly. The process of eradicating flies, the secret behind insect control. Scientists have found a unique solution to deal with the screwworm fly through an interesting study. Researchers discovered that female flies mate only once in their lifetime. Therefore, if they mate with sterile male flies, they cannot produce offspring. This is an important discovery because if sterile male flies are released into the wild, the fly population will gradually decrease, and that is exactly what is being done now. Breeding flies in a factory, sterilizing them, and releasing them into the wild. However, sterilizing flies is not as simple as many people think. When this idea was first proposed, no expert knew how to do it. However, Edward Dibling, an entomologist working at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, was the one who found a way to sterilize the flies, having extensive experience dealing with pests since childhood. He had personally faced a similar problem on his family farm in Texas. Therefore, solving this issue was very important to him. But when World War II began, he and his team had to focus on more urgent work, and the research on flies was temporarily halted. When the war ended, Dibling returned to his research. He realized that high levels of radiation could harm human cells and tissues. From here, a new idea emerged. Instead of trying to kill flies with pesticides, why not try sterilizing their larvae with X-rays? And this was the crucial turning point in the research. Scientists began experiments by exposing flies at different developmental stages to varying levels of radiation. They needed to calculate so that the radiation dose was strong enough to make them sterile, but not too strong to make them unable to attract mates in the wild. After many trials, they finally found the optimal formula, an effective method for producing sterile flies. You might wonder, if all it takes is releasing sterile flies everywhere and waiting for a while, why not do it right away? But in reality, it's not that simple. This fly species is widely distributed across South America, and to achieve this, a lot of factories will be needed to breed sterile flies, along with a huge fleet of aircraft to release them everywhere. Additionally, cooperation from many countries and ecological experts is required to ensure effective implementation. Therefore, this is not a feasible solution in the short term. Even so, if there is concern that sterile flies might escape from the factory and cause a fly disaster. This is not a major issue because they cannot reproduce and will not cause a population explosion. Sterile flies only live a short time and then die, causing no long-term harm. However, if the protective barrier suddenly disappears, that is a different story. Therefore, maintaining a continuous control system is very important. A typical example is in the summer of 2016 in the Florida Keys, where there were many deer. Residents here noticed the deer starting to exhibit strange behavior. They kept turning their heads as if trying to shake something off. Later, large wounds appeared on their heads, exposing white bone. This happened due to attacks by flesh-eating flies. Fortunately, thanks to the urgent release of sterile flies on the islands, the situation was controlled and stable, but interestingly, to this day, it is still not understood why fertile flies appeared in the Florida Keys from somewhere, despite strict protective measures. This is clear evidence of the importance of maintaining a continuous and careful control system to prevent this fly species from having a chance to reinvade. Although sterile flies do not cause disasters, without protective measures, all previous efforts become meaningless. Beyond the US, the issue of flesh-eating flies is not just a concern for one country. Around the world, many other countries are also facing severe impacts caused by these flies. We can divide them into two main groups: Old World flies and New World flies. In this video, we will talk about New World flies, the insects that cause many problems for humans and animals. Old World flies mainly appear in tropical and subtropical regions of Africa, the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, and Papua New Guinea. In these areas, flesh-eating flies continue to be a major threat to both animals and agriculture. Even a South American country like Uruguay cannot ignore this issue, as these flies cause a lot of damage from attacking livestock to transmitting serious diseases to humans. However, when it comes to eliminating flesh-eating flies, a major problem is that this strategy can only succeed if all countries join hands in action. If only one country tries to eliminate these flies within its territory, then these flies can easily move to neighboring countries. Even if billions of sterile flies are released to prevent reproduction, that effort cannot stop the invasion of new flies from other areas. Therefore, if this strategy is implemented in only one country, all efforts become meaningless. To thoroughly solve this problem, countries need to cooperate and build an international alliance to prevent the invasion of flesh-eating flies, as well as prevent their recurrence. However, cooperation among countries is not easy. Each country has its own challenges in maintaining protective measures and carrying out control campaigns against these flies. Differences in policies, finances, and resources among countries make cooperation more difficult. However, the US is quite fortunate to have a favorable geographical location to build and maintain a small but very effective barrier. This location is in ULAC, Panama, where the movement of flies across border areas can be controlled. Equally important, financial factors also play a decisive role in the success of this strategy. Thanks to strong financial resources, the US can maintain a large-scale and long-term control campaign, ensuring that protective measures are continuously implemented and flies are prevented from invading from other regions. Nevertheless, even though the US has favorable conditions for long-term success, it is important that all other countries also participate and cooperate. Flesh-eating flies are not a problem for any single country, but a common concern for the whole world. Protecting the environment and the livestock industry from the attacks of these flies requires unity and strong commitment from all countries. If we can cooperate, share knowledge and resources, we will create a safer environment for humans and animals, and protect the world's agriculture from the dangers these flies may cause. It turns out that the US intentionally released hundreds of millions of flies, but so far, no clear effectiveness has been seen from it. What do you think about this US solution? Please leave your comments below the video. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the secret channel Beyond the Veil 0707 to follow more interesting videos, and thank you for watching the video, and see you next time. Subscribe to the Lala School channel, see?